Hi everybody, Jacob here. Today I'm going to be talking about comping mistakes commonly made by jazz pianists. Just real quick, if you don't know what comping is, it's kind of like the word accompany, and that's basically what it entails. There's going to be some melodic voice, maybe it's a vocalist singing a tune, or say a sax player playing a solo, improvising a solo, and if you are comping behind them, you are accompanying them by playing chords under what they're playing. You have a melodic voice, say a singer, maybe you have a bass player playing the bass and a drummer supplying rhythm, you're the chords in the middle. You are supplying that harmonic information. But as I'll talk about, comping is really more than just blocking out the chords of the song blindly. It's a very musical venture. It's something that requires you to be listening very actively, and it's a really important skill to have as a jazz pianist. The first mistake I'm going to talk about, which is a big one and more than just comping, is overplaying or playing too much. There's a really great bit of advice that I heard for the first time a long time ago. I can't remember which musician told me, but I know many of the greatest ones out there would agree. And it goes something like, the most important thing is not to know when to play, but when not to play. And that is so true in music in general, but definitely when you're comping, when you're accompanying someone, because you have to actively be listening. Sometimes it'll make sense for you to get in there, and if it's musical and it sounds good, you'll get in and have a little conversation with the soloist or play something that adds something in a nice space. But a lot of times you're going to realize the best thing for you to do is nothing. There's a really great exercise I did in college that I feel like helps so much with this. It really helps you learn how to leave more space and not overplay. The exercise is basically this. If you're playing with a soloist, you cannot comp while they're playing. So while their instrument is sounding, yours cannot. So I don't have another soloist to play with, but I'll pretend that my right hand is some other player and I'm comping. And sometimes I would use just my left hand, but I might use both hands. And here's kind of how that should go. It's very hard to do, but I'm going to try this. F blues, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it's a little bit cheating for me to try to do that exercise because obviously I know when I'm about to solo and I know when I'm going to comp because it's one brain controlling both things. But this is really hard when you're doing it with another person because you don't know what they're going to do. If they're improvising, they don't even know what they're going to do. They're making something up and you're also making up your comping as you go along based on what they're playing. What this exercise does is it makes you listen to what they're doing. If it's a really great soloist, you'll hear them developing something. They're trying to make a statement, they're trying to tell a story. And if you just do this, if it's a blues, it's just all chords and you're just filling up all the space, where's there room to tell a story? Where's there room to build something? Now, sometimes it's appropriate to play that much. Maybe it's the end of the solo and they've really built up the energy, or maybe they come out swinging and they're just like, I'm going to play 2 really strong choruses and then I'm out. It might make sense to start that way, but again, as a common mistake, especially a lot of beginner jazz pianists, they think they have to play all the time. Sometimes hearing space when you're the one that could fill it is scary. You have this tendency to want to play, to overplay, to want to fill that space because we don't think space sounds good. But when you have a bass player, shoot, you don't even need to comp sometimes. You can just stop. See, that I was just telling a story right there. It's like that's going somewhere. That was just bass and just a very simple melodic thing. I didn't play one chord. So this exercise will teach you to listen that way, that music is a conversation. When you have multiple players together, if it's a soloist and a comper, you guys are trying to fill space appropriately. One is throwing out some idea, the other one's responding, a call and response kind of thing, which is so important to jazz. So rather than this, So rather than that, something like this. A 1, 2, 3. So there's a conversation. The melody is leaving space and the comping is leaving space, and they're not stepping on each other. And that's how it should be. You also notice if you're the one comping, on the flip side, it can get kind of annoying if there's a soloist that never leaves you any space to do anything. And if you're the person in the band and everybody's contributing musical ideas, it could be worth saying something. Say, hey man, I'm like trying to talk with you. I'm trying to comp and you're not leaving me a lot of space. Why don't we try it again where we really just listen to each other and we try not to play at the same time and see how that works. And in my experience, that is always more musically satisfying. The second mistake that I see all the time, that I hear all the time, especially in beginner players, is they feel like they always have to play dense chords. They have to play these beautiful, colorful... It's always these diminished things on these altered chords, stuff like... You know, that's really beautiful. And if you're playing solo piano especially, those kind of colors are great. But here's the thing. A really great soloist doesn't even need somebody to comp for them. So that probably makes you feel a little unnecessary, but it's true because a really good soloist knows how to outline the harmony. So you don't need to force them like that all the time. So you might play something like... or... So something that weaves in the changes and you can hear the thirds and sevens, the resolutions. So you have to realize as the comper that you don't always need to be even playing at all. So if you do play, it's okay to play really simply. So for this 2-5-1 progression I'm doing, obviously I'm playing the bass right now so you can hear the progression, but if I was comping this, I could do something like... I don't necessarily have to do... and just add all these extensions and all this colorful stuff, because if there's somebody that's just trying to make the changes and just play the 2 5s, you're going to be stepping all over them. And that's the problem with playing chords that are too dense, especially when it comes to dominant chords, like when you're on 2-5-1s. A soloist might go for something kind of colorful, like if it's kind of a diminished or like altered kind of thing. And if they go for something like that and you're playing some wackadoo chord, no one's going to hear it. It's just going to sound like a jumbled mess. So take a hint from some of the masters. Somebody like Basie, right? Who was famous for just comping like this. Sometimes he would just do that and then you wouldn't hear him for like 2 choruses or a whole chorus. And it's masterful, it's tasteful, it's simple, and sometimes that's good. Or somebody like maybe a Bud Powell or Monk too, who was famous for, you know, obviously the whole tritone sound is key to him, but he would solo with a lot of these clusters and be a little bit more rhythmic than needing to spell out all these harmonies all the time. And kind of Bud Powell too, he would, man, sometimes he would just comp like this with just thirds and sevens and maybe a root in the lower octave. So if it's that same progression. So as a piano player, you can comp this way for yourself, or sometimes it might work for other people. You can be playing really spacey stuff, just playing like, and then hit like a, it's really nice to do that, to throw these little bass bombs. Again, if you do it tastefully, your bass player shouldn't get mad at you. And it's just a nice color, like if we're doing a 1, 2, 3. So don't be afraid to use different ranges of the piano. And also, I don't want to discourage you from playing dense chords, because say the soloist goes for some kind of heavy, chromatic lick, something like some diminished thing, and you want to give them a, that's great, go right ahead, but don't go there every time, because sometimes you might be giving away something they're going to do, or if they do something a little more simply or they use a different color, you're going to step all over it, which is why sometimes just holding thirds and sevenths is fine. The next common mistake that I hear all the time is having a lack of rhythmic variety in your comping. It's something that I've had so many students ask me about. They'll say, it's hard enough just knowing what voicing to play and how the chords work and all these complicated jazz harmonies, but then when it comes down to it, I don't even know what rhythm to play. What rhythm can I play in this tune or in this style that makes sense? And really the only cure for that, or the only way to work on that, is to just listen more. Listen to the greats and try to take some rhythms and do something with them. I think everybody is creative in their soul. I think everybody can just mess around with some chords, and if you're playing with a metronome or you just got a rhythm in your head, and you can start improvising rhythms and playing around. But something that I feel like ends up getting people stuck is kind of like soloists that don't develop an idea. Maybe they play and run on sentences and they don't stick with something long enough for you to even grab onto it. A lot of people comp like that. You might have a rhythm that works really well, but then all of a sudden you're playing something completely different. Maybe if I was going to supply you an exercise or something to work on that, it would be kind of, again, back to number one, don't play too much, but also just play the right thing. And if you've got something that works, stick with it. Something you can do to work on this to help you stick with a rhythm once you find a good one is take a tune, any tune, and preferably practice with a metronome, because that's better. But just take the tune, come up with one comping rhythm, and try to comp through the changes only using that rhythm. Don't change it. So now I'm going to try it over Have You Met Miss Jones. A 1, 2, 3. So I did something different at the end, but I stuck with that one rhythm for a really long time. It grounds the song when you do that. It's very hard to do, I'll be honest, because you want to play, and when a soloist is throwing new ideas at you, you want to be, changing what you're doing and playing in different spaces and all the musical things that they give you, which you should do. But again, these exercises are not necessarily something you're going to do in every time in every musical situation, but it puts you in a box and makes you think a different way. So I would really encourage you to do this. And again, I can't stress enough that if you feel like you don't have enough things in your rhythmic arsenal, you're always, wondering, how do I play something that fits in with the groove, something that swings, something that makes sense? Just listen to the greats. They figured it out for us. All we have to do is learn from them. The last mistake I'm going to talk about is a big one. It's not using dynamics when you comp. Now this one might seem obvious to a lot of you. Well, duh, you need to play with dynamics in music in general, because that's such a big expressive part of music, from playing soft to playing loud. It's how music works. But with a lot of beginner jazz pianists, it's still something that I hear. A lot of pianists, they're thinking so much about chords. We're nerds, okay? We're like harmony nerds. We know a lot of chords. We're always thinking about the cool voicing. What can we put here that's going to be slick and make everybody, ooh, but it's like, hey, sometimes it's just about doing what serves the music. And actually, it should always be about that. It should always be about what serves the music. So if you're sitting there and you're playing a lot of nice chords, but you're just playing all in the same range of the piano, and you're playing the same kind of voicings, and you go a whole gig doing that, how is that musical? That's not really taking us anywhere. So I mentioned range. One of the big things, if you want to work on this, is to use the full range of the instrument. And this can be for anybody. If you're comping, guitar players can think about this, a vibes player. If you're a comping instrument, using the full range of your instrument helps so much. So for instance, if you're going to have a soloist that's going to start a solo kind of small, which is typical, and then build and get louder and louder until it's a big, beautiful musical chaos moment. You know, you could start kind of mid-rangey or even start kind of low. You know, again, going back to the blues just because it's something everybody knows. We're doing an F blues, a 1, 2, 3. That might be how you start in the first chorus, but you got to listen to your soloist. If your soloist starts a little hotter, you know, you might want to start a little more mid-range. Maybe a little bit more sustained. Something you will realize is that a lot of times sustained chords have more power than short chords. Rhythmic, when you're doing shorter duration notes, you're leaving more space. It's a little lower on the dynamic scale, sort of, right? So if you're doing... Even if you're playing kind of loud, that's a whole lot less sort of bombastic than... That's really what you want to save for later. So what do I mean by using the range of the instrument to help give you some dynamic variety? Well, you can play, obviously, loud or soft in any range on the instrument. Or soft. So those dynamics are something you need to play with. But in terms of building the dynamics with a solo, a lot of soloists, they go higher and higher as they go. It's very common. You might start kind of mid-rangey, and then second chorus, you might start playing a little bit higher. Third chorus, they're playing even higher. Sax players love, by the time they get to like the fourth or fifth chorus, they're like playing all their altissimo stuff and they're really raging, but you start from somewhere small and go up. So a lot of times as the comper, it makes sense for you to follow that same kind of progression. If I was going to demonstrate, say I was going to take the F blues again, something we all know, and I'm going to start a little bit in a lower register, kind of mid-rangey here, and then as the solo, our sort of imaginary solo, goes up higher and builds energy, I'm going to use a little more of the top register of piano and play a little bigger chords and play a little longer chords, some more held chords, and that's going to build some momentum. So let's just try it. Again, we don't have another soloist for me to play with, but I'm going to talk you through this as I go so you can get inside my mind. All right, 1, 2, 3. So just thirds and sevenths, real simple. Held chord for a little more drama. Abandon the roots, a little higher register. Use a little energy in the low register. Soloist is really going for it. Using the high register as a color, an effect. Playing with the same rhythm. Making the bass player a little mad. Look at that. There wasn't a soloist. There was no improviser. It was just me comping along with an F blues, but there was a lot of dynamic there. I used all the range of the instrument from almost as low as you can go to as high. I was playing loud, I was playing soft. There was a good variety of rhythm that I felt like I was using, and all that combined with listening when you're playing with an actual soloist is what comping is to me. It's what it should be. What you have to realize is you're improvising just like the soloist is improvising. So you have to be in the moment and you have to use the tools you're given to make great music. And that's the video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, click here for more videos like this one, and go to sweetwater.com for all of your music instrument and pro audio needs.